In this video, we're going to have a look at what a sinking fund is and use an example to work through that. Now, the definition of a sinking fund is simply a savings account. So a sinking fund is an actual account used to save for future replacement of a worn out, expensive piece of equipment. So let's have a look here. All right, let's think of Bob. Now, Bob works for a company and drives a company car. Say, hey, Bob. Now, the company knows that in, for example, 5 years' time, they're actually going to need to replace Bob's company car. Now, we know that in 5 years' time, when we want to get the new shiny car, it's not going to cost the same as it did now because of inflation. So we know because of inflation that the price of our new asset will be more. So Bob's car that he's going to drive for the company will cost more in 5 or so years' time. But let's go back to the car that he's driving now. In 5 years' time, that particular car is not going to be worth the same amount anymore. It's going to depreciate. So because of depreciation, let's see if we can put that in here. Depreciation. That car is going to cost less, and we call that the car's book or scrap value. The book value is just the price you could sell the car for again in 5 years' time. The scrap value is if that car actually can't be used anymore, the amount that it's going to be sold basically as scrap. So see, Bob's car is now nice and old, we're going to sell it for book or scrap value, which will be less because of depreciation. So the company is smart. They know that they need to save now for Bob's new car. So how much do they need to save? And they save that in what's called a sinking fund. So we need to see how do we know what the money need, what money is needed in that sinking fund. So we want to have a look at our money needed in that sinking fund. So in that savings account. That's just the difference between the price of the new asset and what we can get for the car for its book or scrap value. That difference is how much we need to save. So the money needed will be equal to the price of the new asset, price of new asset, minus the book or scrap value. Of the asset. So we only need to save that difference because we're going to get some money for selling the car again. Right, so this is what we're going to use now when we work out the sinking fund. So let's have a look at an example. Alright, so in this example, a school purchases a photocopying machine for 150,000 Rand. The machine depreciates in value at 22% per annum on a reducing balance. So that's how much it's depreciated over the time. Now the school wants to buy a new machine in 5 years' time. A new machine will cost much more in the future and its cost will escalate at 19% per annum effective. So it's compounded per year. The old machine will be sold at a scrap value after 5 years. So we set up a sinking fund. A sinking fund is set up immediately in order to save up for the new machine. The proceeds from the sale of the old machine will be used together with the sinking fund to buy the new machine. The school will pay equal monthly amounts into the sinking fund, and the interest earned is 14% per annum compounded monthly. The first payment, now this is very important, the first payment will be made immediately. And the last payment will be made at the end of the 5-year period. So it's very important when those payments are made. It's going to influence how we work on our formula. So let's go step by step. Luckily, in this particular question, it's broken down, it's scaffolded for you, part A, part B, etc. But it doesn't have to be. You need to know to actually do all these parts. So let's have a look at part A. The first part is determine the scrap value of the old machine. Alright, so the scrap value of the old machine, we know the machine costs 150,000 now, and it depreciates over a course of 5 years at that percentage, reducing balance. So we know a formula for that, so let's pop it in. I'm just going to call the scrap value S. So the scrap value, we take our current value of the car. Reducing balance is kind of like the compound interest formula, but with a minus. So it's going to be 1 minus, and it's 22% for 5 years. That gives you 43,307 Rand and 62 cents. So that's how much the car will be worth, how much money we can get for it in 5 years' time, predicted. Right, so that's the scrap value of the old machine. Let's have a look at the next question. Now it says to determine the expected cost of the new machine. So remember, prices go up with inflation, so what do we expect that new machine to cost in 5 years' time? I'm just going to call that C for the expected cost. It's 150,000 Rand now. We know to use compound interest. And let's just have a look back at our question, because there's lots of interest rates, don't get confused. It says here, a new machine will cost much more in the future. Its cost will escalate at 19% per annum effective. That's compounded yearly. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. 19% for 5 years. So in 5 years' time, that car is going to cost 357,000. Sorry, I'm referring to cars now because in my previous example, that new photocopy machine is going to cost 357,953 Rand and 5 cents. So that's the new price that the school will have to pay for this new photocopy machine. Bearing in mind they're only going to get 43,307 Rand and 62 cents for the old one. So you might be expecting what the next question is. The next question says determine the value that the sinking fund must attain 5 years from now. So how much money do we need in that sinking fund in 5 years' time? Okay, so just a reminder, what we need in our sinking fund, we take the cost of a new machine, and we take away what we will get. In other words, it's scrap value. So we worked out the cost of the new machine to be 357,953 Rand and 5 cents. And we take away what we get for it, 43,307 Rand and 62 cents. So the amount of money that I want in the savings account after 5 years is 314,645 Rand and 43 cents. That's how much I would need to save, or the school would need to save, in order to buy that new photocopy machine based on predictions. Okay, so let's see now what our next question is. Calculate the equal monthly payments. Okay, so what do I have to put away every month so that I'm going to have that 314,000 and something Rand? Yes, this is an annuity. So, and remember to draw your timeline, especially so that you can account for when you start making payments and when you end making payments. So let's have a look at our timeline for this situation. Okay, we're going from T0, T1, T2. We know that it's 5 years, and we know that our interest rate is compounded monthly. Let's actually just go back to that question. Right here at the end, it said they pay equal monthly payments. Interest is earned at 14.4% per annum, compounded monthly. Okay. So compounded monthly for 5 years, that makes my total T60. Let's put 1 in before. We know we need to save a future value, so I'm going to pop it here, of 314,645 Rand and 43 cents. And my first payment happens immediately. Read your question. The first payment happens immediately, and the last one happens at the end. So see, this is not a normal end-to-end annuity. It's actually going beginning to end. But don't worry, it actually just means that there's one extra payment. So instead of being 60 as your N in your formula, it's going to be 61. So let's pop that in our formula. We know that we want a future value of 314,645 Rand and 43 cents. We want our X is future value. So we've got 1 plus 0,144 divided by 12, our interest rate. But now there are 61 payments because there's a payment that occurs at T0, which doesn't usually happen with an end to end. Okay, and we divide by interest rate. Oops, let's not forget the -1. Let your calculator do all the hard work, and you should land up with monthly payments of 3,528 Rand and 9 cents. That's how much you would have to put away, or the school would have to put away every month for 5 years in order to replace the photocopy machine with a new one, provided that they sell the old one at its predicted scrap value.